Hi, I'm Mary Kopczynski, the CEO of Regalytics. Before we get on to the 11,166 alerts this week, I'd like to say a happy 20-year anniversary to my amazing husband, Red, who I've actually known since I was 14 years old. You would never believe me unless you met him, but he's the only person in the world who's even louder and more talkative than me. And it's him you have to thank for telling me not to give up and become a Starbucks barista when I couldn't find a job after graduating with a JD and PhD in 2009. So thank you, Red. Happy anniversary. I love you, and I'm excited to be on a trip away from our kid for the first time since he's been born. Which makes it all the more appropriate for this week's topic to be MAWWIAGE, True Love. I already reported on the new House bill last week, but when another popped up this week, I thought, is this a trend? The answer is absolutely. In 2020, there were 40 alerts about marriage. In 2021, there were 63, 32 of which were in Q4. And this year already, we're clocking in at 149 marriage alerts across the states. So keep your eyes out on personal freedoms as the new battleground in our country. The regulator of the week is actually Congress. 4 interesting bills in the hopper this week. One has to do with the government better coordinating and protecting digital identity across all agencies. Another is a hearing to extend the existing online child privacy provisions from age 0 to 12 to the 12 to 16 age range. Third, the Senate proposed a bill to decriminalize cannabis and expunge and compensate people unfairly targeted back in the war on drugs. And finally, another Free Britney campaign, but we are not talking about Britney Spears. We are talking about Brittany Griner, the WNBA star who is being held by the Russians. Speaking of Russia, we are of course following the Russian financial regulators, and there's almost no peep whatsoever on the topic of Ukraine. But they are announcing a new set of ruble coins that will feature rare plants and fungi. And speaking of weird, California and horse racing. This has been an issue that has been slowly escalating over the past few months, and there was a public meeting in Del Mar where people agreed to newly amended rules protecting horses from abuse. If you're following climate, the FCA published a review of its own climate financial disclosures, so check that one out. For those of you following blockchain, North Dakota, of all places, is conducting a proof of concept related to blockchain and the identification of uninsured drivers. The SEC is on an insider trading tear, and this week they nailed some employees at Coinbase who were buying and selling crypto in advance to listing new stuff on their site. And speaking of Coinbase, this week the SEC released their petitions for rulemaking. I love these because sometimes there are ordinary citizens and interested people who write the SEC and say, please make a new rule. So Coinbase asked the SEC to please make a rule explicit for digitally issued securities. My gut is that the SEC will simply tell everyone, hey, if it's a security, you follow the complex web of securities regulations regardless of how you issue it. But that's just me. Also, a UK ESG expert requested a new rule to include better disclosures on company directors. Also, a former Moody's rating expert requested a new rule having to do with swaps and the flip clause. Great insights from both of these guys. The FTC is signaling the CFPB again, or at least I think so. This time they caught a jewelry company acting as a financial player. The FTC got them for a specific rule having to do with military families, but this jewelry company was issuing weird loan-style transactions without being registered. The NCUA passed a new rule for cyber recording for credit unions, so if you're involved in those, take a look. The Fed invited comment on their LIBOR default rules for contracts that still mention LIBOR. So if you're still in the throes of that transition, definitely take a look and speak now if you want to. The FTC is thinking of proposing new accounting rules for troubled asset programs. And finally, we get to the states. Washington, D.C. is proposing an employee rights bill around recreational cannabis usage, and New Jersey put a woman in jail for a year and a day for a fraudulent GoFundMe campaign. She claimed a homeless guy gave her his last $20 to help her get a tank of gas, and she wanted to help him, so she created a viral GoFundMe campaign that resulted in $400,000 in funds. But apparently it was all a hoax, and the so-called homeless guy was even in on it. So that's it this week for Regalytics. We have the most comprehensive, coherent, and customizable regulatory alerts tool in the world. Come and see how company after company is transforming their compliance with this kind of transparency. See you next Wednesday.